Welcome back. This is week 11, part 3. We are talking about the different ways to assess fluency, specifically how to assess prosody within fluency, and talking about that NAEP rubric. And I am now going to have you listen to an audio sample of my student Raya and have you think about how would you score her on that rubric I had just showed you. So let me set that up so you can take a look and listen and see. I also have transcribed her phrasing there with the slashes so you can take a look at how she's phrasing. So let's listen to her speech and then score her on that rubric.
I lost my cat. Where was she? I looked inside the house. I looked under the bed. I looked outside too.
All right, so there you have her oral reading. How would you score her on this prosody indicator? Well, she has 3 to 5 word phrases. I lost my cat. Where was she? I looked inside the house. I looked under the bed. So she has some longer phrasing. However, there's little or no expressive interpretation. So in order to get a 4, you have to have that expression. So I would give her a 3 on this prosody indicator. Let's now take a look at Rosinski's multidimensional fluency rubric, which I like because it's not a holistic score, but it gives you an analytical score in relation to these different components: expression and volume, phrasing, smoothness, and pace. So it teases apart the components of the other rubric, and then you can give them a score for each of these areas. So within expression and volume, do they read in a quiet voice? Does it sound natural, not natural? And so here is increasing in volume and increasing in expression, and then how it sounds as far as does it sound like talking to a friend. Here, phrasing word by word, 2 or 3 words, mixture of run-ons and sentences, little choppy, and then here's good phrasing, which that isn't very numeric, quantifiable, so is a little bit subjective as to what good phrasing might be, which could be a limitation of this. Here we have smoothness, frequently hesitates while reading, sounds out words, repeats words or phrases, reads with extended pauses or hesitations, reads with occasional breaks in rhythm, reads smoothly with some breaks but self-corrects with difficult words and or sentence structures. And then looking at pace. Is it slow? Is it moderately slow? Is it fast and slow throughout? Or is it at a conversational pace? So thinking about that audio sample again, Raya, I'm not going to replay it for you, but you could always go back and re-listen to it. I lost my cat. Where was she? I looked inside the house. I looked under the bed. I looked outside too. So how would you score her on Rosinski's scale? Well, I would give her a 3 for volume. She's pretty loud. But on expression, I would give her a 2. It's very monotone. Phrasing, she adheres to punctuation, but it's very choppy and it lacks intonation and stress. Smoothness, a 4. That might be a little high, maybe a 3.5. Pace, she does keep it moving. She does have a pretty high score for words per minute. So that's how I would score her on that indicator. So conclusions I can make about fluency for this reader based on those indicators is that her volume is loud and audible. She does adhere to periods. She reads in longer phrases. However, intonation with question marks is not apparent, as well as stress. She needs to be more conversational. She's very stilted and choppy. There is no expression whatsoever. So hopefully that gives you some familiarity with some different tools for assessing prosody so that you can apply those to your student this week, because you must report those in your weekly assessment reflection. Here are just some various strategies for developing fluency. Things I'm sure you've heard before, like reader's theater, shared reading. Precision reading is a practice where you have the student read as you do a running record of sorts, and maybe you have them read for a certain amount of time, 1 or 2 minutes, and then you stop them, and then you immediately provide them feedback as to how many words they got and what kinds of miscues they made, and then they do it again right away so that they can correct those errors, and then you stop them again. And I believe you do it 3 times in succession that way, and each time the goal is that they read more words and that they read more accurately. Echo reading can help teach fluency as they echo a model like you or another more familiar student. So these are just some different strategies for developing fluency. Let's move into the next part I want to talk about, which is just IRIs and QRIs, which shouldn't be a lot of new information because you've given an informal reading inventory before, and that is the QRI. So some notes about IRIs. They are individually administered reading tests composed of both graded word lists and graded passages. Now the graded word lists cannot be applied to the reading level. They can't tell you what reading level the student is at. They simply tell you what level to start at with the graded passage. The purpose of IRIs is to place students in materials at the appropriate level, independent instructional frustration, and to start to identify strengths and needs of students in the areas of word recognition and comprehension. So again, the bits and pieces of an IRI is a graded word list, a graded passage, and then some comprehension questions to gauge whether or not their automatic reading was effective in helping them decode for meaning. So the graded word list, words are presented individually or in a list. You could use a peekaboo folder. You want to begin 2 years below the student's grade level and then go up or down from there until they have 100% accuracy. Make sure you write down those substitutions because you can use that as another assessment piece looking at how words out of context are decoded. It can be timed or untimed or both. You can consider how do you handle self-corrections and the time factor. Oral reading passages. The administration of the passage should begin at the same level where the student scored independent on the graded word list. If the student does poorly on a passage, drop down a level until performance is satisfactory. As the student reads, you should code what they're reading and code those deviations from the printed text. Since you can't always score these immediately, the IRIs that is, the decision to stop testing is somewhat based on your discretion. We don't want the student to just sit there and disengage as you score everything, so you kind of need to use your best judgment to determine if you want to give a higher level passage or a lower level passage. You can use the IRI for silent reading comprehension, or you can use it for listening comprehension if you read the passage to the student. So again, talking about accuracy and acceptability, we've already done this, so just to review, that accuracy, all miscues are counted, including self-corrections, whereas acceptability is just the meaning changing. Scoring the oral reading, you're going to want to find the accuracy percentage, and that's how you do that. Comprehension questions. So after the student reads, you want to remove the passage and ask the questions to see what they can do without referencing the text. So you want to read the question and then provide some wait time for them. If the student doesn't respond or appears confused, you can ask the question again or rephrase it. You can also have them tell you more. And then to score, you would decide if the answer is correct, incorrect, or partially correct. However, the QRI does not advise giving half points. Then you want to determine the overall percentage correct, and then the percent correct for each question type to see if there is a strength with one over the other. Reading rate. Again, you can do rate for silent and or oral reading, and this would be your process for doing that. Make sure you consult that Hasbrook and Tyndall rubric to get a grade level estimation. So with all assessments, there are limitations. So what are the limitations of the IRI? Well, the first thing is looking at the reading selections or passages and how representative those are of the grade level they are claiming to be representative of. So performance on the IRI may or may not match performance on class materials like basal. So the passages in the IRI might not match some of your class materials, and the passages in and of themselves may not be the best determiner of that specific level. So like I said, it's difficult to know if passages within one grade level are comparable. There could be a variance in vocabulary, text structure, topic, etc. that could bias the student results in one way or another. Again, thinking about the accuracy of questions. Are they passage dependent? Moving to Common Core, we want to make sure we are really emphasizing text dependent questions. Questions that can only be answered based on your reading of the text, because we don't want them doing those excessive elaborations where they're just giving you answers based on prior knowledge. We actually want to ask text dependent questions, so they're having to reference the text and show you their knowledge of the text. There are some different variations with the QRI you can try out with this reader. For instance, you can have them measure silent reading comprehension. I don't recommend that you give your first one as a silent read, but maybe after you've done one orally and you've determined that they do have a pretty good command of word recognition and decoding, you could have them do one silently. Also, levels 3 and up, you can use lookbacks, which would be good to see if they can recall a certain part in the text where they read about something and how they're able to locate that information within a text. And then you can also use think alouds for levels 6 and up. Check out pages 80 to 84 of the QRI. But this is a cool strategy where you have them stop at designated stopping points and then ask them about what they're thinking about at that point, and then seeing the quality of answer you get. I think that is a great way to draw their attention to metacognition and talk about what they're thinking about as they're reading. All right, so today, or this week, we really had two objectives for our lectures, and that was first to discuss the multifaceted definition of fluency and the best ways to measure fluency. So hopefully now you see that it is more than accuracy, it is more than rate, it is many pieces together. So accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. And we want to be using some of these different tools like the fluency rubrics and scales to see the whole picture of their fluency. And then our second goal was to report and analyze results for an informal reading inventory, the QRI. So we talked a little bit more about QRIs and their limitations, and thinking about what layers can you add to really show the whole picture of the student's fluency profile. So those were our two big goals. I think we met them. I hope you feel the same. To launch you, I have this quote from Peter DeWitz and Jennifer Jones that I was reading in an article recently, and it says, "A child who can read but chooses not to has no particular advantage over one who cannot read." And this just goes back to how important you are as a reading role model and someone to inspire those students you're working with, motivate them to read, because if they can read but they're not motivated to, it's almost as if they just can't read at all. They're not any better off. So go out, motivate your readers this week, get a sense of what their needs are so you can help communicate with them and their families about what they can do to propel them forward. So have a great week. Thanks for all your hard work, and I will see you next week.